Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Manic Manor podcast. We are getting into today's episode with some more Appalachian urban legends and myths. Starting off today's episode, we are going to talk about the Raven Walker. So, this is a legend that circles around Cherokee mythology. The creature is known as the Raven Walker and serves as an ominous role in the tales of it. Known for being the most feared amongst Cherokee legends, Raven Walkers strike terror while also fascinating those who have heard its tale. The legend spans that the Raven Walkers torment the sick and dying to take their life force to extend their own. They appear very tall and frail, almost as if they have aged for many years. This is believed to be because they continue to age despite sucking out the life force of those that they take. Even so, their true form is concealed from the public as they can easily vanish within the blink of an eye. The only way they usually can be seen is by those endowed with spiritual powers, such as those of medicine men within the tribes. They get their name Raven Walker for when they take to the sky and soar just like the ravens, while crying out a bone-chilling screech as they close in on their victims. Even more horrifying of the Mocker is that they aren't known just to take the life force of the dying and sick. Some even go as far as to say that they perform rituals, taking body parts as well to sustain their own decaying forms. How they do this is because they are humanoid and have talents just like ravens would to extract organs and body parts. Surely anyone who sees this creature would be horrified beyond belief. Whether or not the Mockers go in groups, or they just go in solidarity, they're mainly known for being solitary creatures. However, there are some potential ties to other malevolent entities in Cherokee mythology, but are overall known for being lone predators. There are some people, if you talk to them, who believe that the Raven Walkers will act in packs just to unleash calculated acts of terror on their prey. This is because, for those who believe this, they believe they are driven by a collective and insatiable hunger for life forces, which is what makes them so horrifying. When it comes to their ability to take life, it's said that they can do so without leaving so much as a trace of them being there. Legends say that they will stealthily sneak into homes to drain the victims of their life, almost as if these people had passed from natural causes. As mentioned before, usually only those spiritually endowed can see them, such as medicine men. It is their job to protect the tribe by perceiving the Raven Walkers and potentially and protecting people from having harm potentially inflicted upon them. These medicine men stand as guardians for their people, performing rituals in times of great illness by using charms and other various rituals to ward off the evil. Herbs will be burned, prayers will be performed, and symbolic barriers will be made to repel the entities and drown them out from the community. Other names for the Raven Walker could possibly go in the legend, such as Death Caller or Heart Eater, painting the grim image that these creatures are an omen of death, such as the Grim Reaper is in our modern-day society. Now, in more modern times, the Raven Walker stands as a symbol between life and death. Some may even look at the creature, like I said before, as a modern-day Grim Reaper figure. The Mocker stands as a tale showing the delicate balance between the living and the dead, and makes for a truly incredible legend to pass down for generations to come. Moving on, we have a shorter legend here. We're going to talk about another Cherokee legend. That is Spearfinger. This is known throughout the Smoky Mountains, and once again, like I said in Cherokee legend, the name given to her is for the sharp, pointed index finger that resembles an obsidian knife that she uses against her victims. Legend states that she has a particular appetite for the livers of children and would hunt them down if they strayed too far from their homes. So it sounds like a tale that people would use to keep their children from wandering too far and getting lost in the woods. But this was a tale that scared the living bejesus out of many people. What made Spearfinger so terrifying was her ability to shapeshift into a helpless old woman. So the epitome of what you would think was innocent and couldn't do any harm to anyone whatsoever. Just a helpless old grandmother figure. This would make children believe that she could be trusted, and when their guards were let down, that is when she would strike. Her roaming grounds were said to be the mountains between the western part of North Carolina and the upper eastern part of East Tennessee. She would traverse the riversides, throwing stones that would be impossible for an average person to throw, and crying out, attempting to lure her victims to her. So she terrorized this area for a lengthy period of time. We're going to talk about the legend of her demise that goes around is that the council of the local area had been tired of being haunted by this liver-eating woman and wanted to put an end to it. The local medicine man came to the council to tell them that she was not an elderly woman that was harming people, but an evil creature, and warned them of her deceptions and also warned them how to attract her. However, they were still unsure just exactly what they could do to kill this woman. One thing they knew, she was attracted to smoke from fire. It was the way that she knew that people were near, so she would go to collect her victims. So, they dug a hole and they set a fire. And as the tale goes, she appears as an old, feeble woman. And when she shows up, the tribe hesitates. Not the medicine man, though. He sees through her ruse and takes a spear that he has in his hand and tosses it. When the spear hits her, it splinters and crashes against the stone skin of hers. Spearfinger, then angry, charges at the tribe, clawing at the men before she fell into the fire pit. And as she was crawling her way out, celestial beings disguised as birds flew from the sky to aid the Cherokee tribe. There was a bird called the chickadee that landed on her right hand, or around her wrist, and the tribe took this as a sign to aim for that area on her body, and when they did, they severed her hand, and from there she fell to the ground, twitching and still. She had finally died. Now, there are people in the area who can swear to this day that while they hike in the Appalachian area of the Smoky Mountains, they can hear the cries of Spearfinger, or who they think to be Spearfinger, who used to haunt that area and torture people. They claim she is still there, but I will leave that up to you to decide. Now, the final story we are going to talk today is not so much a legend. Well, I guess you could partially call it a legend, depending on what you believe in. This is actually one of my favorite legends to ever come out of Appalachia, is that of the Greenbrier Ghost. Now, this is going to be a longer story because we're going to go in detail about the entire story. So, that of the Greenbrier Ghost is a legend that sends chills down anyone's spine that hears it and leaves you intrigued until the very end. Where I'm from, people are huge on superstitions. Now, my mom, she was always a believer in ghosts. She made sure to tell me all sorts of stories when I was growing up and showed me TV shows about the legends of Appalachia. This was one of them, and it was one that always piqued my interest and has stayed in my brain ever since I was a little girl. Whether you believe it or not, this is on an official record in West Virginia. Our story centers on a beautiful woman nicknamed Zona, living in Greenbrier County, West Virginia, in the fall of 1896. She happened to catch the eye of a newcomer named Edward Shue. He was working at a local blacksmith shop and was quite the looker, had dark hair, deep blue eyes. Every woman that saw him swooned and wanted him. Now, Zona was Zona Hester. She was 20 years old at the time and a very free-spirited woman. This may have been what drew Edward to her, but whatever the feeling may be, both of them, when they saw each other, were instantly attracted to one another and fell in love. Now, Zona's mother, she was very much against the pairing, as the two had barely known each other, and she didn't have this good feeling about him. However, that did not stop the union. Zona was smitten, and she was a rebellious woman and was going to do whatever she wanted to do. Nothing was going to stop her. With that said, Zona and Edward were married only a few months after meeting each other and soon moved in together. Now, on the outside, things seemed to be picture perfect. They had a home, a happy marriage. Edward worked hard to provide for his wife, and Zona played the perfect housewife. It seemed like she was calming down and things were going swimmingly well. That was until the new year rolled around in 1897. Zona had fallen mysteriously sick. Now, Edward was being an attentive husband at the time, or so he appeared. He sent for the doctor to have the doctor look over her, and even had a local boy in town stop by to help Zona with the household chores so they wouldn't fall behind while she was sick. This was a pattern that continued from the start of the new year until about January 22nd. Now, going on that day, Edward stopped by this boy's home, asking once again for him to help out Zona. But however, the boy had had previous commitments to helping other people in town and could not do so. It seemed to aggravate Edward, but he left. However, he would come back and continue to hound this boy and beg him to check on Zona. Eventually, the boy would relent and head to the Shoe household. Now, this child was maybe 11 years old at the time, and when I tell you this child was about to witness pure hell, he was absolutely about to witness pure hell. He came upon the house just like he normally would any other day, ready to tend to the animals, help with the chores, check on Zona while she was sick. But there was an aura about the house that seemed completely off. The house was way too quiet, especially for the time of day that he was there. He said he got to the steps, looked down, and saw blood. He began to panic a little bit and called out for Zona, just to make sure that she was okay. Did not get an answer, so he opened the door and went inside. Of course, the door was unlocked. That was something else that was a little bit odd. So he was making his way through the house, went into the kitchen, the dining room. There was more blood. He made his way over to the bedroom following this trail of blood, knocked on the door once again, asking if Zona was all right, or if she was okay to be witnessed before opening the door. And when he opened the door, he took a step inside and stumbled. He stumbled across Zona's body. In pure terror, he screamed and ran for Edward and for the doctor. So by the time everybody had gotten to the house, Edward had picked up Zona from the floor and had put her on the bed and was holding her in his lap and crying and wailing for her to come back to him. He was so inconsolable, and it was odd at the time, but apparently nobody really thought much of it, but he was holding on to her head and would not let anybody go near her. Even odder was that he seemed to have dressed her, and it wasn't just like a normal everyday dress that the women wore at the time. And you knew the dresses of the 1800s, that took some time to put on. He had her in a full get-up funeral gown, high collar, everything. I guess people thought that he didn't want other people seeing her, out of decency or something, so he just grabbed something and put it on her, but it doesn't sit right when you look further on down the road here. Now, the doctor, he tried to examine her, but there was nothing to be done, and with Edward being so inconsolable, he really just gave a glance over and just said, she's gone, she's dead. The couple had only been married for about 3 months. 3 months of their marriage, completely gone. Now, Zona's funeral was probably just 24 hours from the time she was found to the time she was buried, and it was said Edward was so distraught that once again not even her own mother could be beside her casket, which was odd at the time because women were usually the ones who were preparing other women who had passed away. But instead of it being her mother or other women in town, it was Edward who had her, dressed and propped up. He had propped her head up with a pillow, claiming he wanted to make her comfortable. He was by her side, pretty much making a whole spectacle, crying, just begging her to come back. And to a lot of people, initially, it looked like a very loving and devoted husband who was grief-stricken. But this wasn't something that a man usually did in Appalachia. Now, of course, as the days and the weeks went by, life slowly went back to normal, but for Zona's mother, she was still so very grief-stricken. She had lost her only child. Everything had happened so fast. She hadn't even got the chance to visit the newlywed couple in their home before Zona had passed. And over the next several nights, she spent it praying, just begging to know what happened to her daughter. And it seemed like she was going to get her answer. One night, as she was praying, she felt a presence in the room. Lifting her head, she couldn't believe her eyes. Right before her, her daughter, Zona, appearing as a ghost. Now, Zona went to open her mouth as if to speak, but then she completely vanished. The next night, Zona would make another appearance to her mother. This time, she had a voice, and she began to talk to her mother and describe to her the home that she lived in with Edward, down to the very minute details. And as she did so, towards the end of her visit, Zona made a promise that she would return the next night. And return the next night she did. This time, she revealed something very dark about Edward. She told her mother how he was an abusive man and very evil. He had been married twice before and beat both of these previous wives, and had also revealed that his second wife, like Zona, died under mysterious circumstances. Before her mother could ask what happened to Zona, Zona had stopped her and told her she would return on a final night to show her what had happened. When the final night came, Zona appeared just like she said she would. In the night, she revealed the cause of her death. Edward had become angry at her. She didn't cook the dinner to his liking, and when she tried to reason with him that she had cooked everything that they had, he flew into a rage and approached her and snapped her neck. And after that, she looked at her mother, or her ghost did, and spun her head in a complete 360 to show her that her neck had been broken. And with that, Zona vanished. Horrified and angry, Zona's mother took this story to anybody who would hear it, screaming at the top of her lungs, knowing Edward was the one who had killed her baby. Eventually, word got around so much that the story went to the local authorities. Now, the local prosecutor then met with the doctor that had supposedly examined Zona thoroughly and asked if he did, in fact, do a thorough examination. He finally admitted that due to Edward's grieving, he did not get a good look over Zona's body. And for them, that was enough to exhume Zona's body. Edward was brought with them while they dug up her body, and then forced to stay while the doctor conducted an examination of her body that lasted 3 days. Everything had been fine until the doctor got up to Zona's neck. Then it was said that Edward became extremely anxious. It was visible. When her neck was revealed, there was bruising. And from that bruising, and further looks into it, the doctor could see that her windpipe had been crushed. This is exactly where Zona had told her mother that she had had her neck broken. With this revelation, Edward was immediately placed under arrest for the murder of Zona. Now, he stood trial June 22nd, 1897, and was eventually found guilty of first-degree murder, even with just circumstantial evidence surrounding it. Zona's mother had gotten up on the stand testified that her daughter had come back from the grave to tell her what had happened and to seek justice. So it was said that a lynch mob was formed outside to try to do vigilante justice on Edward, and he had to be hidden away before taken to prison, but he only lasted about 8 years in prison before he passed himself. So that is the story of how a spirit solved her murder, and the case being on record in West Virginia. And that will do it for today's episode of Appalachian Legends and Lore. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I am looking forward to doing more episodes with you all. I have got a slew of things packed up, including a whole bunch of haunted East Tennessee. I hope you all are looking forward to it, and as always, I will see you in the next episode.